What up, Marsh Pod? Talking the drama in Indy. Have not had a chance to speak on that one just yet. And little media 101, based off the reports that came out with Showtime and the concerns around Corey Yams, concerns or not, how the media can actually be used and is used by teams, players, organizations in all sports. All right, back. Hope everyone had a phenomenal fourth weekend ahead. Great week of games. We're recording this early morning on Friday, July 7th. And haven't had a chance yet, so we're going to get to the media 101 and how, and this isn't just related to SimWorld, but if you look across all forms of sport, the way in which the media can be used. Now, and we'll get to what the media means. I think that's become a boogeyman term that's completely misconstrued. But first, we're talking Indy and the drama that has continued to percolate around the stripes and most notably around Barkley James. That I thought we were done, but in post-game interviews last night, Barkley decided to continue to keep that as a forefront topic in the universe that we all exist in. And so just so that we're, kind of being transparent, I'm not making up any of these phrases. I'll read you real quick some of his responses. So he was asked about coming off the bench. Did he contribute to that game? He said no, he feels he needs to start. I think he benched me to quote unquote punish me for letting out how I feel. So no, he did not feel that the benching contributed to what happened. There was a follow-up. Do you think the punishment was justified in the fact that most teams probably could have cut him and Barkley may not be on another team? This is his full response. No, all I was doing was letting out how I feel. No one takes notice of how I feel or who I am. They only use me for my talent and never really talk to me. I am often ignored quite a bit, even by the coach, before this happened. If I was cut, I would have came back. I won't do this to anyone else unless they are like Storm. Storm just made me so aggravated from it all. So no, I don't think this quote-unquote punishment was justified. With all respect to Coach Storm, every coach had their own way. Now, in fact, let's start by this. I have been critical of Coach Storm. That's fine, but that's also my job, right? Job is to be critical and to be positive, right? To opinionate. That's our job. And there are some things that Coach Storm has done that I would not agree with. It took a while for Reza Red to become a focal point of that team. I think that's at the fault of Coach Storm. I thought Johan Novajovic, the early portions of the season, I thought he probably could have started, maybe should have started. He's continued to come off the bench. That's fine. They've seen the growth of White Williams. That's a good move by him. So my job, all of our jobs in this occupation is to be critical. So not coming in, and I want to express that criticalness because we want to observe everybody fairly, positively and negatively. But for Barkley James to call this to every time, air quoting I am, but he is in his statements quoting punish and punishment, shows a complete lack and utter disregard for his own actions. He's taken no accountability for what he's done and what happened. In letting out, so he says he was letting out how he feels. That was the first part of that second quote. That's fine. That's fine to let out how you feel in the locker room, but he broke the sanctimonious barrier between the locker room and the public space. Anybody who has ever been involved in sporting, in team sports at any level, whether that's high school, where we are here, college, professional, which I certainly have not been on the professional level, but in the college locker room, those conversations, those concerns, they stay there. If you have a problem with somebody, whether that be a coach, a teammate, that stays in the locker room. That is determined in the locker room. That's the unwritten rule of sports, and he broke that. He broke that by coming out. He said what he said privately, that he was bothered that he was gone or Coach Storm was gone. It was one of the two. But then he went and made that public. So, yes, you were letting out how you feel, but you did it in the one space at a team sport level that you're not allowed to do. The media is not a therapist. And we'll get to how the media can be used and is used at all levels. But in this instance, it was misused, and it was done in a absolutely abhorrent way by Barkley James. And he goes on to say, I won't do this to anyone else unless they're like Coach Storm. So you've immediately contradicted yourself. Immediately about, well, I wouldn't do this to anyone else, but I would do it too if you're like this coach. Bob was the one that asked the question in that press conference, and he's absolutely right. Coach Storm was well within his rights to cut Barkley James. And you know what? As Indy's attempts to get into the playoffs, to the race to one rather, are dwindling, I wouldn't be surprised if he is cut. Just purely from a statement of we aren't going to withstand this type of behavior on a team that is deteriorating our chemistry. If that were to happen, zero part of me would be surprised. But as a player, you cannot say, I won't do this to anyone else, and then immediately contradict yourself by saying, unless you're like this person. Because now you're telling every other coach, what you're trying to say is, well, me and Coach Storm have some disagreements, and I would not act like this with anybody else. That you're trying to set what Barkley is, whether he's intending to or not, and based off his lack of awareness, my guess is he is not aware of what he's trying to say. But you're trying to say, every other coach out there, Coach Joyner with Showtime, I wouldn't do this. But then you immediately caveat it by saying, but it's not my fault that I'm doing this. The reason I'm doing this is because of Coach Storm. So you are taking no accountability, again, for the statement that you said. No apologies. No, this was a poor use of words. I was caught up in the emotions of a loss and the building frustrations that we've had of an inconsistent season. What I said was a spur of the moment. There's none of that. It's purely, I acted the way I did because of you. And in terminology of today, it's called gaslighting. But that's what he proceeds to do. The challenge is, and we've seen this again at other levels, this is not unique to SimWorld Hoops, and the example I can give you is Dillon Brooks. The challenge is Barkley is good at basketball. Now, he's not DJ good, he's not Bronny James good, but he's good enough to get a second chance. And it's the same thing with Dillon Brooks. Dillon Brooks signs a 4-year, $80 million contract with the Houston Rockets, now which I would say is a is a vast overpayment of Dillon Brooks. But why does he get that? And why were the constant he's going to China rumors never going to actually, or not rumors, but jokes never actually going to occur? Because Dillon Brooks is good at the game of basketball. He's good enough to be in the NBA, and he was never going to not be on a team regardless of his personality. But Barkley James is in a similar camp, at least in SimWorld Hoops. Where he's going to run into a problem is that he may get a second chance somewhere. Because guess what? There are a lot of college basketball teams in the Division I level and elsewhere. More than 300 schools at Division I. Some of them are going to have ecosystems in place that they feel worthy of taking on Barkley James and what he has proven to be a disastrous personality. Some of them are going to do that. Some of them are going to have an ecosystem to survive it. Some of them are just going to do it because they think he's good and they would unable to otherwise get a player of his caliber. Now, what's his caliber? Middle of the pack, top 50% in the league, but he's not elite. But the teams that aren't going to give him a second chance are top schools. I would be stunned if any of your tier 1 programs, Kentucky, Kansas, UCLA, USC, Michigan, Michigan State, Miami, your Big Ten, your Pac-12s, your powerhouse schools, your Power 5 conferences, I would be shocked if any single one of them decided to get involved in the Barkley James experience. Because guess what? They don't need to, and Barkley James isn't good enough to. The last thing I will say is that we've seen incredible support from Benari James and the rest of this roster. And it's shocking, specifically Benari James's support of Coach Storm, because it says a lot about where Coach Storm stands in this league, or in this with this team and that locker room. I said I've been critical of Storm. That's my job, and I'm not shocked that there is unrest in the locker room, because there's unrest in every single locker room. Heck, Bay Area had unrest when Royce Anderson wanted to start. But at this level, we've already seen Coach Storm get incredible backing from his players, one of whom is the brother of the player that is causing this unrest. And the fact of the matter is, at this level, wins, losses, and adjustments don't drive hiring and firing. It just doesn't happen. There's not a surplus of coaches like there are at the NBA and collegiate levels trying to get into this. So it's not that you just keep somebody because you need a body. If they are that bad, there's adjustments made. But for the most part, wins, losses, and adjustments by the coaching staffs are not what drives decisions like it is in the college and the pro level. Jobs aren't on the line in the same way. Barkley doesn't get that, or at least he chooses to ignore it. But based off his past behavior, I think he just doesn't get it, because he just doesn't get anything that he's been doing so far. And it's drastically damaged him and will impact how he performs the rest of the way. We've seen the league dole out suspensions. They're not going to dole out a suspension for this one. We've seen the league remove players from its halls with Malachi Booth. The last time you'll ever hear me say that name. Barkley James isn't far from reaching that if he continues on this track. Now, shifting gears ever so slightly, a little media 101. So let's start with the media, the term the media. The media has, that phrase has garnered this boogeyman type, well, the media. The media is exactly what we as a population have allowed it, enabled it, and wished it to be. The media does not come up with storylines elsewhere. Are there members of the media that are using their position incorrectly? Absolutely. Do they use it for their own personal gain? Absolutely. But guess what? Hyperbolic statements, vast exaggerations are what drives interest. It's why Stephen A. Smith, Skip Bayless, Nick Wright, Colin Cowherd, Colin better than the other ones, but it's why they all are as popular as they are, because they make these outlandish statements time and time again. They're right enough of the time to garner continued listens that we all turn to it. So all of this drama that stirs up, that's what we want to see, because we've asked the media to give us that. That's what gets clicks. That's what gets views. So to say the media does this, the media doesn't do anything that the populace and the audience doesn't want to see. So let's start with that. The media is what we as a population have made it. So to just use the term, well, the media is doing this. The media is not doing anything except reporting on, seeing, and reacting to what the leagues, in this case SimWorld Hoops, has done. So let's start with that. But Corey Yam's drama, and this is where the media can get concerning to me, because it can be used by teams, players, and organizations for their benefit. So Corey Yam's drama feels extremely orchestrated. From where, I don't know. But it's somewhere that wants there to be distrust in the team and the player. Because it's apparent that from every conversation I've had with those members of that team, and from all the initial reaction and reporting, it doesn't seem as if the concern over his personality is something that originated within that locker room. So who was it? I don't know. But consider that the media is constantly used as leverage. Let's use another NBA example, Damian Lillard. The Spurs are a team that Damian Lillard, quote unquote, deeply respects. Why? Not because he wants to go there, but because he needs another team to be in the somewhat mix to trade for him, so he can get what he actually wants, which is to go to Miami. So shifting back to Showtime, something's fishy about that, because someone wants there to be distrust, animosity, concern about that team. Somebody wants Corey, to be bothered, wants their divisions to be drawn for who says this, who said that. if it's kind of like fishing. You toss your line out, you say, I want to catch a fish. I'm going to throw it over here. I don't know if there's a fish over there. I'm going to throw my lure. I don't know if they're going to want to eat that lure, if they're going to want to eat that worm. I'm going to throw that over there and see what I catch. Maybe you catch something, and bam, you've got yourself a fish. But maybe you don't, and you reel it back in and nothing happens. No change to that ecosystem in that part of the lake, that part of the pond, that part of the ocean. This is the exact same way. Somebody from outside, in my opinion, casts a lure out there to say, what can we stir up? So far, it seems as if nobody on Showtime has been on that. But the potential was that you throw this out there and you say, maybe somebody reacts. Maybe somebody says, yeah, I agree with that, thinking they have a constituent within those halls that have concerns with Corey Yams and his personality. That has not so far happened, but that's why that was leaked. And it's probably leaked by somebody who has a relationship with a reporter that they felt they could publish. And that is where people say the media gets that term when reporters, and I'm not saying anybody on the SimWorld reporting staff has done that. It was only a hard in the paint, purely a leak, purely a rumor. But reporters have the due diligence to report, to investigate, and to make conclusions. Where that has been ridden astray is that reporters are more interested in the clout and the relationship of breaking things than they are in actually doing the reporting. Again, I'm not naming any names of this in this environment. I'm just saying in general. And that's where the media can be used. If you have a reporter on your side, which, take this one for example, Shams Charania is a client of Rich Paul and whatever, I can't remember now for whatever reason, the name of their agency off the top of my head. He's represented by them. So there is a interest from both sides, one to get stories, in Shams Charania's case, to get stories, and on the other side of the house, Rich Paul wants his clients to be painted in a certain light. So there's a symbiotic relationship between reporter and agent to get that information out. And that's why, and that's how the media can be used. And in this case, that's exactly how it was attempted to be used. It seems as if it didn't work. But a little media 101, that's how it does work. And that's why these stories come out. Not necessarily because there's any truth to them, but because drama is asked to be stirred up. And without due diligence by reporters and honest reporting being done, it will continue to happen. All right, have a great weekend. We'll talk to you on Monday.